There are stories, whispered online and shared in the dead of night, that feel too specific to be mere fiction. They come from different people, in different towns, across different years, yet they all share the same chilling details. They are stories of encounters with beings that look like children but are anything but. They are known by the one feature that betrays their inhuman nature: their eyes. Solid, pitch-black orbs, like the eyes of a shark, devoid of a soul, of light, of humanity. This is the legend of the black-eyed children, and the most important rule in every single story is the same. No matter what they say, no matter how much they beg, you must never, ever let them in. These are 7 of their most terrifying encounters. The night was aggressively ordinary. It was just after 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the house. Rain tapped a gentle, rhythmic beat against the window panes. A soothing sound that usually brought a sense of comfort and security. That feeling shattered with 3 soft knocks on the front door. It wasn't a loud, aggressive banging, but a hesitant, almost timid tapping. Annoyed but curious, the homeowner walked to the door and peered through the peephole. Standing on the porch, huddled together under the small overhang, were 2 children. They couldn't have been older than 10 or 11, a boy and a girl, both wearing simple dark hoodies that seemed inadequate for the rain. He opened the door just a crack, leaving the security chain latched. Before he could speak, the boy looked up, his face pale and his voice soft. "Excuse me, sir," he said. "We're lost. Can we please come in and use your phone?" The request was reasonable, but an immediate and overwhelming wave of pure dread washed over the man. It was a primal, animalistic fear that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. His instinct screamed at him that something was profoundly wrong. "I'm sorry," he managed to say, his own voice tight. "I can't let you in, but I can make a call for you." "Who should I call?" The girl looked up then, and her voice was sharper, colder. "We need to use the phone ourselves. Let us in." Her insistence sent a fresh spike of terror through him. It was then, as they both took a small step forward into the dim glow of the porch light, that he saw their eyes. They weren't eyes. They were pits. 2 perfect, solid orbs of the deepest black imaginable, without an iris, without a pupil, without any light. He slammed the door shut, his heart hammering against his ribs, and fumbled to engage the deadbolt. He didn't hear them leave. The only sound was the rain and the frantic, terrified beat of his own heart. Chapter 2. The Stranded Motorist. The fear of an intrusion into your home is one thing, a violation of your personal sanctuary. But what happens when you are the one who is trapped, isolated, and utterly alone? The car sputtered to a stop on a stretch of road that was little more than a black scar on the empty landscape. There were no streetlights, no houses, just miles of dark fields on either side under a moonless sky. The clock on the dashboard read 2:37 a.m., and of course, there was no cell service. The driver was completely stranded. After 20 minutes of hopeless silence, a flicker of movement at the edge of the headlights caught their eye. 2 silhouettes, small and childlike, emerged from the oppressive darkness and began walking slowly, deliberately, toward the car. They didn't wave or shout for help. They just walked with a calm, unnerving purpose. They stopped right outside the driver's side window. One of them, a young boy with a pale face, tapped lightly on the glass. The driver, heart pounding, cautiously rolled the window down just an inch. "We need a ride," the boy said, his voice flat and devoid of any emotion. "Our house is just up the road." A cold dread, thick and suffocating, filled the small space of the car. Every instinct screamed at the driver to roll up the window and lock the doors. "I'm sorry, my car is broken down," the driver lied, their voice trembling. The child's calm demeanor vanished in an instant, his face contorted into a mask of unnatural anger. "We need a ride. Let us in," he repeated. His voice now a low, menacing command. He and the other child pressed their hands against the glass, their small palms leaving greasy prints. In the rhythmic pulse of the car's hazard lights, the driver saw their eyes, soulless, empty voids that swallowed the light and reflected nothing. Pure, absolute black. In a surge of adrenaline-fueled panic, the driver turned the key one last time. The engine, miraculously, roared to life. They slammed the car into gear and sped away, the tires screaming on the pavement, leaving the two small dark figures standing motionless in the red glow of the taillights. Not all of these encounters happen under the cloak of darkness. Sometimes the horror is bold enough to show itself in the flat, grey light of day, making the experience all the more surreal and terrifying. It was a chilly, overcast afternoon in a mostly deserted park. A man sat on a bench, scrolling through his phone, enjoying the quiet. Across the way, on a rusty swing set, sat two children. They weren't swinging or talking, they were perfectly still, just sitting, and they were staring directly at him. At first, he tried to ignore it. Kids stare. It's what they do. But this was different. The stare was unbroken, unblinking, and felt intensely predatory. For 10 solid minutes, he tried to lose himself in his phone, but the feeling of being watched, of being sized up like prey, became an unbearable weight. The silence of the park felt heavy, unnatural. Finally, unnerved, he looked up, ready to ask them what they wanted. But they were no longer on the swings. They were on their feet, walking across the damp grass directly toward him. Their pace was not the playful run of a child, but a slow, deliberate, and unnervingly synchronized walk. As they drew closer, he could see their faces more clearly. They were pale, almost waxen, and as they came within 20 feet, he saw their eyes. There was no white, no color, just two solid orbs of polished black. He didn't wait for them to speak. He shot up from the bench and walked away as fast as he could without breaking into a full sprint, the feeling of their cold, empty gaze burning into his back with every step. Perhaps the most terrifying thought is not of something trying to get in, but of something that is already there, sharing your space, silent and unseen. A woman was driving home late one night, the road empty and the landscape swallowed by darkness. It started as a subtle feeling, a prickling at the base of her skull, the distinct, unshakable sensation that she was being watched from the back seat. She told herself it was just fatigue and overactive imagination playing tricks on her after a long day. She glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing. Just an empty, dark back seat. But the feeling didn't go away. It grew stronger, more defined. It felt like a physical presence, a weight in the air just behind her head. The car suddenly felt claustrophobic, a tiny metal box she was trapped in with something. Her heart began to race. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, trying to focus on the road ahead. Then, a voice. It was a soft, childlike whisper, so close it seemed to be right beside her ear. "Can you take us home?" A scream caught in her throat. In a motion of pure panic, she slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt in the middle of the empty road. Her eyes shot to the rearview mirror. For a single, horrifying split second she saw it. The reflection of a small, pale child, its face barely visible, its eyes two bottomless pits of black, and then it was gone. She hit the gas, the engine screaming as the car rocketed forward. For the rest of the drive home, she didn't dare look in the mirror again. The seat behind her was empty, she knew, but she also knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she was no longer alone in the car. Hospitals are places caught between worlds, between sickness and health, between life and death. At 3 o'clock in the morning, they are also profoundly quiet, sterile places, where the silence is broken only by the rhythmic beeping of machines and the soft squeak of rubber-soled shoes on linoleum. A nurse was doing her late-night rounds, walking through a corridor that had been locked and secured hours earlier. It was a long, white hallway, bathed in the unforgiving hue of fluorescent lights. At the far end, standing perfectly still, were two children, a boy and a girl. They were just standing there, side by side, facing her. Her first thought was professional concern. How did two children get into a secure wing in the middle of the night? Were they lost? Were they patients? As she started walking toward them, a strange cold began to permeate the air. It wasn't the normal, air-conditioned chill of a hospital. It was a deep, penetrating cold that felt unnatural, like all the warmth was being actively drained from the world. "Are you two lost?" she asked, her voice echoing slightly in the empty hall. They didn't answer, they just watched her approach. She got closer, the unnatural cold intensifying with every step, making her breath mist in the air. She was about 15 feet away when she saw their eyes. They were dark, hollow pits, absorbing the bright fluorescent light and reflecting nothing back. The nurse froze, a wave of absolute terror overriding all her medical training. Her mind couldn't process what she was seeing. These were not children. They were something else entirely, something ancient and wrong that was merely wearing the shape of a child. She took a single step back, and in the time it took her to blink, they were gone. Not run away, not hidden. They simply vanished from the spot where they stood. The unnatural cold dissipated instantly, leaving behind only the sterile hum of the hospital and a lingering, bone-deep fear that would follow her for the rest of her life. The wilderness promises solitude, a peaceful escape from the noise of the world. But that same isolation can become a trap. Miles from civilization, the thin nylon wall of a tent is the only thing separating you from the vast, indifferent darkness. Two friends were deep in the woods, the embers of their campfire glowing a dull orange against the pitch-black night. Inside their tent, they were settling in, the sounds of the forest a comforting lullaby. That comfort was shattered by the sound of a twig snapping just outside, then another. It wasn't the heavy tread of a bear or the light scamper of a raccoon. It was the deliberate, soft footfalls of something on two legs. They held their breath, listening. A small voice, a child's voice, spoke from just outside the tent flap. "Hello, is anyone in there? We're lost." A chill that had nothing to do with the night air crept over them. They were miles from any trail, any road. No child should be out here. One of the campers cautiously moved toward the zipped door. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice shaking. "We just need to come in for a minute," the voice said again, now joined by a second, similar voice. "It's cold out here." There was a new edge to their tone. It wasn't a plea anymore. It was a demand. "Please, let us in." One of the campers slowly, fearfully, unzipped the tent flap just a few inches to peer outside. Two small children stood there, their faces pale and indistinct in the gloom. But their insistence, their strange confidence, was terrifying. "You have to let us in," the first child said, its voice flat and commanding, and as it leaned forward, its face came into the faint moonlight. Its eyes were completely black, two soulless voids staring out of a child's face. The camper screamed and yanked the zipper shut. They spent the rest of the night huddled together in absolute terror, listening to the two small figures occasionally circle the tent, their soft voices repeating the same chilling phrase over and over, "You have to let us in." Every legend has an origin point. For the black-eyed children, the patient zero of this modern folklore was a journalist from Texas named Brian Bethel. Back in the late 90s, he posted an account of his own experience online, and in doing so, gave a name to a fear that would soon spread across the globe. Bethel was sitting in his car late one night, parked in a movie theater parking lot in Abilene, Texas, using the light from the marquee to write a check. Suddenly there was a knock on his driver's side window. He looked up to see two young boys, not quite teenagers, wearing hooded sweatshirts. He cracked the window and the older boy spoke. He explained that they wanted to see a movie but had left their money at their mother's house. He asked for a ride. Bethel describes an immediate, overwhelming and inexplicable wave of terror. His fight or flight response kicked in, even though the request was on the surface innocent. He hesitated, making excuses. He told them the movie had already started. The boys became more insistent. Their speech was described as rehearsed and mechanical. One of them said, "We don't have a gun or anything." It was a bizarre, unnerving thing to say. As his fear mounted, Brian Bethel finally looked directly at their faces, and he saw their eyes. He described them as coal black, like two great swathes of starless night. There was no iris, no sclera, just a solid, soulless black. As panic took over, one of the boys seemed to sense the shift. His voice became angry, demanding. "We can't come in unless you tell us it's okay." He banged on the window. "Let us in." In a final act of self-preservation, Bethel threw the car into reverse and sped out of the parking lot. When he dared to look back in his rearview mirror, the spot where the two boys had been standing was empty. They had simply vanished. That night, Brian Bethel's story was born, and with it, a warning that has echoed through countless retellings since. If they come knocking, do not, under any circumstances, let them in.